and welcome to The Ripple Impact, the podcast where we dive into those fascinating small moments, big decisions, and unexpected ripples that create waves of change in brands, careers, leadership, and in life. I'm Laura Barber, founder of The Ripple Impact and a brand strategist who spent over 2 decades inside global giants like PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, helping leaders turn human stories into brand growth. Each week, I sit down with bold thinkers and what we call wavemaker guests to explore the ripple moments that have shaped their journey and the lessons you can take to transform your brand, your business, and your career. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to have someone with us who truly understands the power of human careers, human choices, and human stories. Suzie Walker, MD and founder of Suzie Walker Executive Search, a headhunter who has placed over 1,000 leaders, facilitated more than 200 million in compensation packages, and recently became Amazon's best-selling author for her book, The Successful Candidate. Suzie's ripple moments stretch from an entrepreneurial childhood background to falling into recruitment, building her search firm, to writing the playbook that will help 1 million people transform their careers. Suzie, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here today. Delighted to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm absolutely thrilled, Laura. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too. Thank you so much for joining us. And it's the perfect timing, right, to be talking about your book because it's a week before Christmas Eve. I cannot believe we're a week away. So this is wonderful timing for people to get those last minute presents in and those wonderful book purchases for everyone. So it's lovely to be able to talk to you today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. We're on the kind of countdown of sleeps for Santa now, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. I'm almost wearing Santa vibes today. So unintentionally dressed like Santa. Yeah, exactly. Suzie, when we first spoke, you talked about growing up surrounded by incredibly driven, self-made founders, people who had built their businesses from scratch and created communities, ambition, and real generosity through the work that they've created. For many people, entrepreneurship can feel really quite risky and uncertain, a little bit scary, but for you described it just kind of feeling normal. Can you take us back to those early days and that environment and the ripple moments that have really set you on your career path and your journey to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, with pleasure. It's been fantastic, actually, just having the time to sort of think back to those earlier days as I've been preparing for this. But I think I was lucky enough to grow up in an environment that was probably quite unique. You mentioned there that people often think about setting up your own business or being entrepreneur as quite a brave thing to do, but it was my normal. So I grew up in an incredible environment. I'm from the Midlands. It was a time where it was primarily manufacturing. It was the industrial heartland of the UK fundamentally. And my dad and his friends within that community, they were working class, and they built these incredible businesses from nothing. And they were primarily all linked to manufacturing, but it was automotive, it was steel, metal businesses. And I'm not just talking a handful of people. There were, 100, 200 of them. And just the energy, it was incredible. It was so positive, very driven people. And, it didn't go perfectly all the time. You don't always have successes, that they had some failures too, but it was just the way that they thought about things and the drive and the determination and ultimately and its mindset. Fundamentally, they had this incredible growth mentality, but in an amazing environment to be in.
Yeah, I can imagine. I love the way you talked about it like an energy. It feels like such a vibe. I can almost feel it, like you just talking about it. It feels like such a pacey, galvanizing spirit. Like, how would you describe the mindset and the energy around founders and entrepreneurs?
I think it was their attitude to success. So fundamentally, they were trying to create something from nothing to give better lives to their families and then ultimately to their communities. But it was the fast pace, it was the energy, it was the belief that they could do it. And they all worked in different businesses, so they're all kind of founding their own companies, but they supported each other emotionally, even to the point where once they all became very successful, They formed, I guess, an informal group where they then ended up giving very generously to local communities, for charities, to sports clubs, etc. But it was this really dynamic, positive environment. And to grow up in that, I don't think I really realised at the time just how unique and special that was. But looking back on it now, it's great. So as I then came on further in my career to set up my own business, maybe naively, but I never saw that as a brave thing to do. I saw that as a natural path. And having worked in a corporate environment prior to having my own business, definitely I'm better suited. My personality is better suited to that entrepreneurial environment.
Yeah, amazing. It's funny because you talk kind of, you were like naively, and it's like that comes up so many times with founders and entrepreneurs, this element of this naive ambition and naive tenacity. But actually a lot of founders saying, if I kind of knew now what I knew then, maybe I wouldn't have done it. So actually this element of naivety is actually a bit of a superpower, because you just go, you just go fully into it, not knowing what you're going to get, but actually there's a bit of beauty in that as well. So incredible. What an amazing environment to be around, and to set you up to ultimately create your own business. But you didn't start there, did you? And no. You mentioned to me you fell into recruitment. Tell us how that happened, from originally wanting to be a lawyer. Is that right?
Yeah. So the original plan was to be a lawyer. So my dad's entrepreneurial, very much a business environment, not from a business family. As I said, he was working class, and he sort of started everything from scratch, but went on very much into that business world. My mum's family were all lawyers. I think there were, if I'd become a lawyer, I think I would have been the 14th in the family to become a lawyer. So an entire family of criminal lawyers primarily. And looking back on it, actually, Laura, I'm not sure it ever was my plan to be a lawyer. I think it was sort of the natural way forward. I loved school. I was very capable. I was the scholar at school. And the options presented to me, careers services back then or careers advice back then was fairly basic, if I'm honest, particularly for a female. I'm 50 now. So if you think back then, kind of what were the options for females? So as a sort of an able individual, the options presented to me at the time were medicine or law. I would be absolutely hopeless. I used to faint in biology. I'm completely squeamish. That was never going to happen.
Yeah, me too. I have that too. Yeah.
So that was never going to happen. And law did appeal to me. I didn't just sort of nod along with the process, but I think it was just a natural expectation. That was the route that I was going to take. The plan was that I'd go to Cambridge, read law, then go and work for a top law firm in London. I failed. I didn't get in. And I think that was, for me, that was a ripple moment, in the sense that's the first time I'd failed at something. And it shook me, and it really made me question, I'm sure I would have loved going to Cambridge, but do I actually want to do law? Is it me? Is it the right thing to do? Roll forward kind of 4 years on, and having done a business degree and majored in marketing, and I find myself sat in Michael Page being interviewed with a potential to going into a career in marketing, and they have incredible clients. And it was a discussion about, would I like to be an assistant product manager, an assistant brand manager? And they're explaining what that involved. And then they disappeared for a bit and came back in with another colleague, and they said, have you considered recruitment? To which I said, well, no, but I'm open to hearing more about it. I had a friend, a really good friend, who'd started working in the city. She was working in-house, one of the big investment banks, doing recruitment, and loving it and making a fortune. And they did a great job. I adored being there. It's an incredible business. The training was fantastic. And that's how I fell into recruitment a long time ago.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I actually have a falling into my role story as well, but I'll save that when I do a role reverse and someone asks me about my ripple moments. But it's funny, isn't it, how like sometimes these conversations of someone just saying to you, have you ever considered recruitment? You could have just said no and it stopped there, and you would have gone down a marketing path. So it's funny, isn't it, how these little moments can have such a seismic shift on people's careers. And it's interesting because I think about marketing just as human stories. And recruitment is human stories too, but just in a very different way. It's around the human behind the role, isn't it? So it's fascinating that from a instinctual marketing space, you're still in the world of human stories, but now in the world of recruitment.
And I think that really suited my character. I'm naturally curious, or as my kids would say, nosy. And and I think in order to do what I do well, you have to be interested in people, and it's gaining that deep understanding of what motivates them. And I realized pretty early on in my career in recruitment that I had a really natural affinity for it. I had a really high emotional intelligence. I was really good at it. I was able to form a relationship with someone and understand what drives them or what holds them back.
Yeah.
And that's the trick, because ultimately it comes down to fit. But I loved it. I absolutely, I'm still doing it 28 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. And what, I mean, you've described it already, but what are those little nuances that really drove your passion for it? What are those moments of recruitment and people specifically you were like, that's the bit that I really love?
I think there were probably two things to me. I went on off to work with Corn Ferry, and I really enjoyed the insight you get into the commercial strategy of a business. You get to see the bigger picture of what they're trying to achieve. And to get it right and help them to deliver that, they need talent, but it has to be people who fit. It's the culture fit, it's the chemistry fit. The technical bit's easy.
Yeah.
And it was the challenge of that. And the better you can understand and relate to someone, and the better grasp you can get of a company's culture and get that fit right. And I was just really good at it. The fit element, I had a gift for it, and it becomes addictive. Even now I get a real buzz when we place candidates. I just know when they're the right fit for a business.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. No, it's lovely. And I can feel the energy from you. I can feel the excitement from you as well. No, I totally get it, because culture is such a difficult thing to explain on paper, isn't it? When people are going for jobs and they're applying for roles, and they can talk about their values and things like that and how the office operates and the day-to-day life. But culture is such an intangible kind of ripple that happens throughout the organization. It's very hard to describe that. You get almost like a feeling. So to be able to understand that and then be able to crystallize that in the people that we need is such an art. So yeah, amazing.
And it's great when you get it right, but we'll all know as a candidate, if you've got it wrong and you've gone into a business that's not the right culture fit for you, it feels wholly uncomfortable. So it's quite an emotional reaction. I still get a buzz from that.
Amazing. So you mentioned you spent 28 years in this industry. What was the moment from going corporate side to going, I'm going to set up my own firm? I absolutely love this. I'm going out my own. Suzie Walker Executive Search, go. Like what was the journey to creating your own firm?
I think for me, it was always going to be that natural progression. Go in, listen, learn, get your trade, get your skill set, and then go it alone. I maybe very naively never saw that as a risky move. And I'm quite a strong character in the sense that by that time I'd formed my views as to how I would run my search firm, what we would stand for, how we would care for people. And I just went for it. So I'm not sure there was a huge amount of particular strategy or planning at the beginning, if I'm really honest. I knew that we wanted to specialize. So that was my big thing, that, we would specialize in that marketing area. It's an area I've always really loved. And it lends its strengths to kind of the background that I came from. But I just boldly went from it and built it from there.
You've spent 28 years in the recruitment industry, placing senior people within the job market. And you said something really powerful to me when we first met, that what's happening right now is pretty unprecedented. And it's unlike 2008 and COVID in terms of what's happened in the recruitment market. Can you walk us through these unforeseen and now really seen forces that are shaping the market today, and what leaders need to understand about what's happening in this new world and what it means in terms of recruitment and careers?
Yeah, of course. So my personal view on this is, at the moment, what we're seeing in the market, we're December 2025. What we're seeing right now is about 15 months of consecutive volume of people coming on to the job market at a senior level. For the purpose of this, I would be categorizing senior level of people who operate at head, director and chief of. That's the area in which we operate. So that's my area of expertise. But you mentioned there that I feel that it's different to what we saw in 2008 and COVID. And the answer is yes. So 2008 financial crash obviously tipped us into a recession within the UK, but the epicenter was the financial markets. The lion's share of the redundancies were within that area. COVID was clearly an entirely different scenario. We saw FOLO and we saw redundancies, but that was really across all levels. The impact that we've seen in the last 15 months, in my view, has really been focused at that senior level. It started with the big tech cuts that were heavily publicized in the US, summer of 23. We tend to lag about 3 to 6 months behind the UK in terms of major impacts in jobs. And we've just had a knock-on effect of multiple factors that have got us to this point. So we had national insurance hikes. They were announced in January 25, came into play in April. That had a far bigger impact on the senior job market than I think anyone could possibly have predicted. To put that in context, if you look at the data that we collate in terms of new people registering with us, and we had a 438% increase on first half of 25 versus first half of 24. It's just astonishing.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
If we put a job up on LinkedIn, global marketing director, chief marketing officer, 5 years ago, we probably would have expected about circa 300 applications. Easily now, 1,500 to 2,000 applications. And if you look then at the people who've applied, I would say on average about 70% of those people are either actively on the job market or they're currently maybe doing some fractional work, but they're definitely looking for a permanent role. And those numbers, my estimate would be we've got about, certainly in marketing, around 10 times the volume of people actively looking for a role than you would normally have. So yeah, it's huge.
That is absolutely huge. And what a huge amount of disruption. And as you said, because there's also much fractional work as well, that these numbers must not necessarily be reported either, that these are almost what you call the hidden figures of the amount of people on the market that may not necessarily be claiming benefits or officially through the system as unemployed, but actually in a situation where they're actively looking at work. Wow, 10 times is a huge number.
Yes. And, you'll see different dynamics now come into the market. My predictions actually for 26 is I think the worst is over now at a senior level. In the last few months, we've seen a steep decline in the number of people registering, which is brilliant news for the market. And we've seen a big uplift in the number of people getting new jobs. And consistently throughout the whole thing, we've had a really good flow of roles. The challenge that you have is it's a really competitive market.
Yeah.
So for candidates for senior marketers trying to get on the shortlist, it's tough. But I think 2026 will be a significantly better year for people.
And also as well, in such a competitive market where you're going to be getting 1,500 to 2,000 applications if you post something, jobs probably aren't being posted either. To save the systems, right? And actually people going through networks rather than going through the traditional advertise, apply, etc. But actually there are a lot of recruitment agencies working directly with the people that they already have on their books, and actually network being absolutely essential to getting roles these days.
100%. The whole executive search market has fundamentally changed within the last few years. If you are looking for a senior role now, headhunters remain absolutely critical, but you need to build relationships with them. The approach required in this highly competitive, technology-driven marketplace requires real effort and engagement from the senior candidates, which is hard. That's a whole new world. But you definitely need a really clear value proposition. You need to invest in networking, as you've just mentioned, and build relationships. And it requires the following of a strategic plan, because to your comment there. Many of the roles that people would be looking for are never going to be publicly advertised.
Yeah, fundamentally different market and therefore fundamentally different behaviors needed from candidates who are looking for roles. And I know we're going to come on and talk about the book, which is really, really exciting. And I want to talk about the catalyst for that, because my question was going to be, was that the inspiration that's driven the book? But I know the book has been 2 years in the making. So tell us about the original idea for the book and how that's evolved in terms of how it's now reflecting the reality of the market today.
The book was 2 years in the making. I think the original plan for the book was pretty simplistic, actually. What I wanted to do originally was share case studies and expertise of 3 decades in the business. And I turned 50 this summer. So for me, that was a pretty major milestone in my life. And I started to be quite reflective, actually, in terms of what I'd achieved, but what was going to be my legacy. And as I was working on the book, I got about 7 chapters drafted, and I was working on the book. And I've seen this market change more in the last 15 months than I've experienced in 30 years. And I thought, actually, I need to amend what I'm doing here. People right now need a self-help guide for senior leaders. What are the new rules? How does this market work now? What are the rules of the game? How do I win? So the successful candidate is fundamentally an action-driven self-help guide for a senior leader to get their dream role. It's basic, it's practical, and it really works. The response we've had has been overwhelming, but it's got about 90 tasks. So some are 5 minutes, some take an hour, but you could buy the book and literally work your way through and ultimately become the successful candidate.
How incredible to have such a practical tool for people, because in a moment of uncertainty, there's often this fear of like, what do I do? Because unless you have someone that's on the end of the phone like you, Suzie, going, actually, these are the practical steps and the environment's change and actually advise this, this, and this. It's like, where do you start? Because if you're not, that you're competing with 1,500 other people, and this is at a senior level, right?
Yes.
There aren't, we're not talking assistant brand manager and brand manager level where the numbers are even bigger. This is senior roles.
Yes.
So if you're competing with potentially 2,000 other applicants, knowing how to stand out in this market and arguably marketing yourself becomes absolutely critical. Amazing. 90 tasks. Wow. Sounds like such an incredibly practical toolkit for people. And how does the book work? Could people use it modularly in terms of, actually, I really need help with this bit? Or how does it work in terms of how people would actually use it to become that successful candidate?
So I think you've got 2 options. If you get made redundant and you want something that is literally a step-by-step guide that you can work your way chronologically through the book, you could literally start at chapter 1, work through to chapter 10. We have lots of people who feel they've got pretty good foundations and they just want to improve their interview skills. So they'll go straight to chapter 7, which is all about interviews. I've had some great messages, actually. I'd be fascinated because people have been messaging in to say they've used my killer questions at the interviews. I thought, oh my God, all these companies are going to be asked the same questions by candidates taken from the book. But there's a chapter on negotiating skills. So, when you're almost the successful candidate, and if it's through a direct approach, how do you negotiate to get the best value? How do you understand how it all works? So there are absolutely specific areas that you could go and hone in on, or quite simply, you could work through end to end. But the idea is that it becomes, it's a self-help guide, but it becomes your companion. It's there for you. And if, even once you get your role, there are still things within that people could be working on. You made the comment about marketing yourself, and actually that will make the biggest difference. But before you market yourself, you need to be really clear on what your value proposition is, and then how you are going to promote your own personal brand.
Yeah, incredible. And it's had such a good response from the market as well, hasn't it?
It's had a phenomenal response. A big thanks to my team. Honestly, it nearly broke me towards the end. It ended up being a way bigger project than I could possibly have imagined. But team have been fantastic, and we've achieved Amazon bestseller status in all 3 of the categories that we're listed in. But for me, it's not so much about that. It's the messages that we get. I'm getting people who are relieved because they've been frustrated that they were getting nowhere. And honestly, the messages, we get them on a daily basis. I bet I get between 10 and 50 a day from people saying, thank you. This is surprising, enlightening, and just great because I can follow it step by step. We've had people who are getting their first offers. It's made it all worthwhile. I'm absolutely thrilled.
Yeah, that's amazing. But what incredible legacy. And in such a difficult period, as you said, it's an unprecedented time where there's been so much change in the market. There has been so much redundancy. It's felt in all corners. I felt it too. Like it's a completely different market to be in. So to be able to offer people that help, that support, that guidance, as you said, really practical tools and tips to step by step take people through that journey is such an incredible legacy. So not surprised you've had such wonderful comments. And tell us about your goal, because you've got a wonderful, audacious goal with the book as well.
Yes, people probably think I'm absolutely bonkers with my goal, but I set myself a personal challenge to support 1 million people. So in my career, to give perspective on the numbers, in my career, I've placed over 1,000 senior leaders. Actually, it's closer to 1,500, but let's say 1,000 for the purpose of the illustration. I wanted to supercharge that. So clearly, I'm not personally going to place those people, but I realized that if I wrote something that was genuinely that self-help guide, that could have such wide reach. And therefore I set myself a goal, and I thought, well, why not 1,000 times 1,000? Hence my help 1 million people. And it's not just those individuals. The reason I do this is when you get it right, it has such a positive impact on someone's life. If you think about the roles that we do and the careers that we do, the time that we spend there, the people we're spending our time with, everyone's experienced when it's worked well and when it hasn't within their careers. But when it's right, it's amazing. And it has such an impact on your loved ones as well. If we can help 1 million people land the job of their dreams, the knock-on effect of that is huge.
I think it's wonderful. And I mean, I work founders and businesses and leaders every day, and I'm always the one that's going, let's go bigger. I think it's an incredible ambitious, and you will totally achieve it. I have no doubt. And what a wonderful thing to give people the tools and the tips and the tricks. Give us a couple of nuggets. So give us a little sneak peek. Give us a couple of maybe your favorite things from the book, or maybe your favorite killer question, or give us a little tease so people get a little insight into what they'll get across all the 90 exercises and the practical tools and tips. So there's a couple of nuggets to excite people.
I think Chapter 5. Don't skip through the book. Be the first one. If you're gonna, if you're gonna buy it, read the whole thing. Then you'll get the benefit of it. Chapter 5 is the chapter that explains the new rules of the game. So I think that's one that people will probably, the amount of people who've gone, that makes sense. That makes sense, but I wasn't aware of it. So chapter 5 is the new rules of the game in terms of how to get your senior role. Or for me, it's probably actually the chapter about mindset and magnetism, because my personal view is the biggest difference that you can have to have a positive impact is mindset, and portraying positive and energy and clear thinking and clear communication will have a greater impact on success above all else. And so I go into a whole chapter on how to achieve that. So for me, it'd be mindset and magnetism, and chapter 5, which reveals the way that it all works these days.
How fantastic. And what's coming in 2026 then? So what's next for Suzie Walker Executive Search?
Well, as a search firm, we plan to continue to serve our clients and grow. We will remain a specialist for senior marketing and digital roles, and we already have some fantastic roles that we're going to be going into the Christmas break with, and obviously starting properly when we get back in the new year. And in terms of the successful candidate, we've got some really exciting plans that will happen for that within probably the first 6 months of next year. So I will keep you posted on that.
Yeah.
Laura. But yes, we have an exciting year ahead of us.
What future ripples do you see coming in the world of recruitment that you would advise leaders, job seekers alike in terms of what's coming in 2026 and what to expect? You alluded to earlier that you see such positive momentum and the tide shifting a little. So what do you see for the market for 2026? January is often that time, isn't it, that people, they've had their Christmas period, they have a time to reflect. What do you think we can expect next year?
So predictions for next year, I think that there'll be many new jobs in the first quarter of next year. We've already seen that unlock after the recent budget. So lots of things were holding, and then now the budget's been announced and companies can plan financially. So there's already that wave of roles coming through. So I think it'd be a really positive first half with regards to new roles. I think we'll see some trends come through. So the rise of the chief AI officer. So I think AI will definitely, I think we'll see those specific roles. And in terms of what we're seeing within the job briefs, every single senior leader that we're hiring now is required to have a really good understanding of AI from a marketing perspective, how they will lead a team with regards to AI, and how they will use it strategically to deliver growth. And interim, I think we'll continue to see a rise in interim roles. You tend to get that if you've had a period of economic volatility, which we've had for years now. But I do think we'll continue to see a rise in interim roles. Interim enables companies to hire really super talented people with strategy and transformation skills in the world of marketing. And I think we'll see good growth for those areas as well.
Yeah, amazing. Such fantastic advice. And I'm sure really positive and really hopeful messages for people as well. Is there any nuggets or things that companies are saying to you or asking of you that you think could help people that are on the job market or looking to move roles? What are the organizations saying that candidates should know about?
The common threads are the ability to deliver commercial value. Transformation skills seem to appear in pretty much every brief. Leadership and emotional intelligence. So leading through change is the classic phrase, and AI understanding. And I've been recommending to anyone who's found themselves in between roles to gen up in terms of AI courses that are available, and there are many, and we've got a list of some options on our website, but there are multiple ones. But that will be expected from every senior leader going forward without a shadow of a doubt. You don't want to be stuck in an interview scenario where you're not up to speed on the latest changes in AI relating to marketing.
Absolutely. That's fantastic advice. So as people go into the Christmas break and hopefully purchase the Successful Candidate book, what advice would you give to aspiring wave makers? So whether that's someone on the cusp, maybe they're not the senior leader yet, maybe they are, someone who's looking to make a change in their career, what advice would you give to them?
If you're someone who's looking to progress your career onto the next level, I would recommend having a clear plan. So be clear in terms of your value proposition, what your end goal is, and be clear on your plan to achieve that. And start building your own brand profile now. Don't wait until you're director or chief of level. Get involved now. Seek out opportunities to speak at events, take part in webinars, go on podcasts, get a good mentor, ask for a sponsor within the business that you work with. Really work on your network and raising your brand profile now. It's a process that evolves. You will really appreciate the investment over the long term in doing it. You're never going to regret that, and you will end up with an incredible network. And that's probably how you'll then find your director or chief of role as you progress through, because you'll have this really strong group of people who know you, who are there to support you and help you.
Amazing advice. I wish I'd have had that advice 10, 15, 20 years ago. It'd be incredible to set everyone off on the right path. And for any CMOs out there or kind of global director levels that are in this job market and are competing with the 1,500, 2,000 other candidates, what advice would you give to them?
Honestly, I think the first thing I would say, because I'm having these conversations on a weekly basis, is the situation you find yourself in is a reflection of the global job market, not you. And I know that sounds very obvious, but I want to say it anyway, because a lot of the conversations we have are trying to help people emotionally at the moment. You know, it is not easy if you are a senior leader. Well, not easy for anyone if you lose your role, but it's not easy as a senior leader if you lose your role. And people understandably find it a really hard emotional process to go through. And there will be many people who will have been on the job market for most of this year. And so it's easy to say, harder to do, but it's not personal. So don't let it knock your confidence. On a practical level, it really then requires clear value proposition, build those relationships with the search firms, and really work on your own brand. And if you can master those three things, that will absolutely help in kind of getting you onto that shortlist. But it is competitive. There is no other way around that just at the moment.
Fantastic advice. And week before Christmas, as people are, well, kind of hopefully winding down a little bit, then it's such incredible advice for people. And I think, as you talked about, the emotional piece as well is so important, because it's a difficult situation. There are so many people that have been made redundant and are on the market in a fiercely competitive environment, and having to pivot and change and adapt and get used to this new world of applying for roles and how the game has fundamentally changed. So I'm sure that'll be really great and very comforting advice for people. So thank you so much.
The only other thing I'd probably add, Laura, is be open to interim, because if you've been made redundant from a permanent role, you may want to go back into another permanent role, but interim's a great option. There's probably going to be more interim rather than permanent roles available. It gives you more options to consider. There isn't any, I get asked all the time, is there a status issue if I've done an interim role and then in 6 months' time I go back into a permanent role? I said, not in this market. We have seen, that classic linear CV. I'm not sure it even exists anymore. So no one's going to make a judgment on you for doing that. If anything, they'll be impressed because you'll have something really interesting to discuss in terms of that last 6 months. But I'd definitely be open to interim as well as permanent.
Fantastic advice. Suzie Walker, thank you so much for taking us under the surface of your journey, unearthing some of the challenges that are happening right now in what is a very complex job market and a very difficult economic environment, and rays of hope and rays of sunshine, a positive outlook for 2026, which I'm sure will be really happy news for many people, and a really incredibly practical self-help toolkit in this wonderful book in The Successful Candidate to help people through that journey and to navigate the new world that everybody's facing. So huge congratulations to you and the team.
Laura, thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. For everyone listening and for everyone YouTube watching, keep chasing your curiosity, stay bold in your creativity, your choices, build your network, build your personal brand. Never underestimate the ripple of the small moments that you can have on your own life, but also on others. If you're looking to elevate the human storytelling of your brand, please get in touch with us at the Ripple Impact so we can see how we can help your business. That is a wrap on this Ripple episode. Tune in weekly for more bold voices and inspiring Wavemaker guests. Don't forget to subscribe and to follow, and please share with anyone who would love this episode. I'm Laura Barber. This is the Ripple Impact. We will see you all next week. Suzie, thank you so much. Bye for now.